let's talk a little bit about DevOps data loss risk. So what can cause you to experience data loss of some way? So what can disrupt your work in the DevOps space? Executive summary is not a rocket science. Those are things that you've probably heard about. External threats such as malicious actors and ransomware attacks, human error and accidental deletion, service outages and downtime. So those are all the things that we are familiar with. But what are some specific cases that we should look into? The first one, and my favorite, is a little bit of game. Can you guys please guess? You can guess it in the chat if you want. What are those numbers? I can just tell what those numbers mean, what they stand for. I can only tell you that they are related to data security in DevOps in some way, especially to the scope of the last year. So if you can type in your guesses in chat, I'd love to see those. And in like 5 seconds, we'll move on. Those numbers are numbers of security incidents that specific DevOps service providers experienced in 201 security incidents, which basically means that they had security incident 2 times per week on average, which probably can be scary. Obviously, the scale of those incidents is very different, and I've just highlighted a couple of those. Those incidents are sometimes starting from something that can seem quite minor, like outages that happened for GitHub in May, when they had 3 outages 3 days in a row of a different scale, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, which basically meant that you don't have access to your platform and you won't be having access to your platform for some time. Another thing is the fact that there can be an issue in the platform which leaves you out opening for a ransomware attack, which we've seen happening in Atlassian with a huge vulnerability around code execution in Confluence, which happened in March. In GitLab. This is actually quite interesting because the outage that vulnerability that was there to the one up some of the issues on your provider can still mess. And even if they are corporate, and even if they have all those nice certificates, and even if they are doing great job at remaining compliant, they can still a huge number of incidents happening. Scale of those can be very different, but as you can see, for example, in case of GitLab, they reached the CVSS score of 10 in one of their incidents, meaning that it was the heaviest one possible. What it tells us? It tells us that what we should do is that we should start asking ourselves, okay, we operate with this platform, but what are we going to do if our vendor is going to mess up? What are we going to do if GitLab has an outage, if GitHub has an outage, if Atlassian has an outage? And we've already seen in history outages lasting up to 2 weeks. They haven't affected everybody, but they have affected some of the people. So it shows us pretty clearly that our trust for those should be limited. So many of you will say to me right now, okay, Greg, so if I can't trust my cloud service provider, I should switch to my on-prem installation. I should go over to Jira Data Center. I should go for GitHub Self-Managed, for GitLab Self-Managed. And yes, many companies do so, but your system administrator will always tell you that they cannot give you 100% warranty that everything's going to work 24/7 all the time. Again, risk of failure is relatively low, but it can still happen. We still hear about disk failures happening in our servers. We still hear about the network issues that cause data transfer disruption. We hear about bugs and glitches in the software that you're using to maintain your databases, and data corruption is still a common thing. Does it happen every day? No, it doesn't, but the chances are not zero. And as we established at the very beginning, we need to be prepared for the worst possible scenario. So even the fact that you have your own infrastructure and you're hosting everything on it, it doesn't mean that your infrastructure is not something that can fail. And if it fails, your risk of losing your DevOps data and risk of losing continuity of work in your development department, in your software development department, is still there. Next thing, and this is our most common human risk that occurs, is human error. Because we can say, okay, even if we work with the best cloud vendor there is, or even if we have top-notch infrastructure, which is the safest possible, there is still possibility that somebody personally will mess up along the way. I cannot say how many times I've seen somebody deleting something by accident. Jira is the king here because people tend to delete accidents, tend to delete attachments by accident all the time. If you are making some bulk changes to the platform by bulk export or bulk import, there's a risk of messing up the data. We can have conflicting pull requests that cause some data inconsistency or data corruption. There's multiple things that can happen. I wanted to share one scenario that one of the customers I've been working with experienced some time ago. I'm not going to mention the customer by a name, but it was pretty interesting story because it showed how little is needed to lose access to your whole source code, or how careless people can be. Basically, what our company has done, or what company of one of our customers has done, to be specific, they hired a subcontractor to work on software development. They have been working on a mobile app, and to speed up the process of development, they hired external contractor to work on it. Contractor was super nice and super helpful, or at least it seemed that way. And they offered that, hey guys, we are going to help you with automatic deployment of your application with every upgrade. We'll establish AWS account for you, and we'll establish automations to connect your GitHub with your AWS to make automated deployment. But for this, we need appropriate permissions in the GitHub account. And what our careless GitHub admin has done, they thought, oh, I'm not sure what permissions specifically they need. I'm just going to make them admin. I'm going to make them admin. I'm going to make them owner. They will have access to everything, and they'll set up what I need. A few weeks later, there is a dispute between subcontractor and the company that hired him on the quality of work, which can happen always. I'm sure that more than one time you've been subcontracting something and you had some dispute with your subcontractor. And sometimes as a part of this dispute, we say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to talk with you. We are not going to argue. I'm withholding the payment until you fix what I want you to fix. And typically in such a case, subcontractor either has to fix what we are asking them for, or subcontractor takes us to court. There are only two options here. However, our subcontractor had a third option, unfortunately, because he got mad and he abused his admin privileges and cut off everyone else from GitHub. And suddenly, the company lost access to their whole source code. All the GitHub, all the source code has been lost. To mention, that subcontractor also had access to AWS, so app deployment has been lost as well. And all the money that companies spent on software development has been now gone. I can mention that there is a good ending to this story. I'll tell later how it was achieved. But if we were to end here today, company would have massive issue. and I can tell you that I know that the company owner has been berated by investors for his carelessness in dealing with subcontractor. So as you can see, even if you think that you're a responsible company owner, mistakes can happen. Sometimes even somebody with tons of experience, and trust me, the guy that was running this company, the guy that was managing GitHub and this company wasn't a junior. Issues like this can happen for everybody. Then the next thing, ransomware, which is to some degree connected with accidental deletion and with human errors, because many times we are the people that leave opening for ransomware attacks. But sometimes opening is in the platform. Service provider makes an opening because of the error in their software or vulnerability in their software. And many times companies say, okay, but we are too small to be target of ransomware attack. Like, okay, if you're a power plant or if you are Fortune 500 company, then yes, for sure, ransomware can touch me. However, Malwarebytes report from 2017 told us that 35% of small and medium businesses worldwide have been victims of ransomware attack, and 90% of attacks ended up with over 1 hour long downtimes. Obviously, those attacks targeted at small and medium businesses, they are not truly targeted attacks. Typically, they are exploiting vulnerability which exists in a certain platform. But as we've discussed today, those vulnerabilities did happen last year. They happened in GitLab, they happened in Atlassian, and I'm 100% confident, unfortunately, that they will happen this year as well. So we need to be aware that ransomware is not only something that applies to big guys, it can apply to everybody. So as you can see, we have different verticals of those risks. And even if we say that, okay, the risk of those happening is not that big, the risk is small. And here I have one example coming from the big guys league, but very funny one, and that have caused a lot of discussion in the industry. The incident that Mercedes-Benz faced on the verge of 2023-2024. So in September last year, researchers from Red Hat Lab discovered that there is a mishandled GitHub token in public repository that belongs to Mercedes employee, and that mishandled token gave access to internal GitHub enterprise server of the whole Mercedes-Benz. This token was also generated with a little bit of carelessness in setting up rights and privileges, because it gave unrestricted and unmonitored access to entire source code that was sitting there. Information about the leak has reached Mercedes-Benz in January 2024, 4 months after the token has been discovered. So for over 4 months, somebody could have used this token, first of all, to leak the source code of Mercedes-Benz from their IT systems that they use in their cars, for example, and we don't really know up to this day if it was leaked or not, because the token was unmonitored. The malicious actor could have deleted the source code. Luckily, they didn't do that, but it was possible. So it shows us nicely that, again, minor mistake, mishandled personal access token can cause us to have major leakage of our code, and it opened companies such as Mercedes-Benz, who I'm sure has a wall full of security certificates, to losing huge part of their source code by somebody maliciously deleting all the source code using such vulnerability.